welcome to the inaugural episode of the Monster Island Board of Directors presents the Monster Island Gatekeepers podcast. I am your host, William Horatio George III, the special liaison of the Monster Island Board of Directors, and with me is my board-mandated co-host, Dr. Dante Dourif.
My recording booth smells weird and funny.
Well, Dr. Dourif, everything about you smells weird and funny, to be fair.
I resemble that remark. It's just as Mother used to say.
Well, we did opt to do this in separate areas of the island because, well, it was a little bit icky where you wanted to record in the first place. I personally prefer the posh offices of the Monster Island boardroom, and you, for some ungodly reason, decided to stay in your smelly basement.
Well, you'll recall that I did invite you to my smelly basement, but you ever so politely declined. Maybe next time.
I tell you what, we can talk about that later. Much, much later. But, of course, we have some very important news to get to. In fact, we have to tell our listeners what exactly is going on because they are expecting a podcast from that inferior podcast that is formerly the Monster Island Film Vault. And now they are presented with this pristine, new, and improved version, the Monster Island Gatekeepers podcast. So, Dr. Dourif, would you please take a few moments and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and our podcast?
Oh, well, I'm not quite sure where to begin with myself. You see, I'm really just a simple man. A simple, somewhat sticky man that lives in a basement surrounded by my beautiful mushroom
okay,
children.
That's enough. That's enough. Thank you, Dr. Dourif. We appreciate it. I'm sure we will get to your backstory later. Much later. But I do not want to waste our listeners' time.
I can wait. It's all time to me.
I understand. You have plenty of time on your hands and apparently grease, given the fact that this memo you sent to me earlier today, which I can barely read because it has so much. I'm hoping to God this is mayonnaise, but I am not 100% sure.
Well, the only ones who know are me and my mushroom children, and we're not talking.
If you don't mind, I'm going to discard this particular one that you sent me earlier and read the following memo from my laptop, if that's okay.
I'll learn to live with your decision. I've got a lot more sticky paper where that came from. Don't you worry.
I'm quite sure. You have lots of sticky things in that workshop, if you can call it that. But anyway...
If you only knew the half of it.
Oh, yes. That is very unsettling to think about, and I don't know if our listeners are prepared for that. But I tell you what they are prepared for, and that is to hear the actual news of the week. We stole this little idea from a fellow podcast that we quite enjoy. Its name escapes me at the moment, but they are a couple of outstanding gentlemen. In particular, I think it's that Michael fellow. He is a very, very handsome man and a very distinguished gentleman, and he does such a fantastic job on that other podcast. So we decided that we would integrate some news items into our show to pay homage to such great podcasts such as theirs. Also, this news comes directly from our benefactors, Dr. Dourif, the Monster Island Board of Directors, the distinguished, I might add, the Monster Island Board of Directors. So, excuse me while I clear my throat and take a drink of water.
Do.
Don't rush me. Don't rush me, old boy. This is. I'm trying my best to produce a top-of-the-line show that our listeners deserve. So if you'll bear with me and just be quiet for a moment while I read this memo. This is very important.
You've got it. Not a word out of me. Zipping the lip, as it were. Throwing away the key. No talking. Not a sound out of me. Not even a deep, unsettling Matango laugh. I'm done now. You can just go ahead. Just a little bit of humor here from me. Pretty funny, don't you think?
Well,
you go right ahead. I'll oh goodness. I do make myself laugh. I do kill me so.
Oh, All of a sudden, every hair on my body has just started to stand up. But
Mine
anyway,
too, oddly enough.
Anyway, here's the memo directly from the distinguished Monster Island Board of Directors. And it says, the Monster Island Board of Directors would like to announce the conclusion of our investigation into the accident in which a rogue Gauss escaped the aviary, resulting in millions of dollars in property damage and the consumption of one island employee, which is extremely tragic, might I add. We can now confirm the identity of the consumed individual as the Monster Island Legal Action Team member, Gary S. Stewart. A memorial service for Mr. Stewart was held at the Ishiro Honda Memorial Garden on the 30th of September 2021 at 1 o'clock p.m. JST. In lieu of flowers, Mr. Stewart's family has requested that donations be made in his honor to the Dr. Mughal Center for Cancer Research, which, might I add, is a wonderful, wonderful foundation. It is also with heavy hearts the Monster Island Board of Directors reluctantly has to confirm that Mr. Stewart was indeed involved in criminal activity, including, but not limited to, the illegal trafficking of biological materials, the sale of sensitive information pertaining to Monster Island, abuse of island funds, dozens of unpaid parking tickets, and gerrymandering. While obviously we cannot bring Mr. Stewart to justice, the board is convinced he was working directly with an accomplice or accomplices. We plan to use every means at our vast disposal to bring these criminals to justice and restore perfect peace and order to our island home. We now know that these are trying times, but we trust that you, the faithful Monster Island Board of Directors presents the Monster Island Gatekeepers podcast listener, will help us find a better way forward. Signed, the Monster Island Board of Directors.
Profound, and I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure what gerrymandering means, but I did like hearing you say the word.
From what I understand, is it like when you abuse a chicken or something like that? Is that correct? Or is that something else? I don't know. The laws on this particular island are just kind of weird.
All I know about chickens is that they are very delicious.
Indeed, they are. They are delicious. In fact, whatever you had for lunch today looked delicious. It smelled dreadful, but it looked delicious.
It certainly wasn't chicken.
Well, again, please, Kenny, will you edit this out? But if anyone is listening to me at the Monster Island boardroom, can you please find me a different co-host? This one is creeping me out.
I'm sorry, what was that you just said?
Nothing. Never mind. Just we'll continue with the podcast. We'll do our best. Yes, we're making Nirvana out of nausea today, obviously. So, with that said, Mr. Dourif, do you know what types of topics we will be covering on our beautifully illustrious podcast?
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. I wasn't entirely sure why I was asked here today, and I did have to Google the definition of podcast just to make sure I got it right, and even after that I wasn't entirely sure, but anything that might have to do with mushrooms or very mushroomy related topics is very much up my alley, and I dare hope that something like that might be on the docket.
Yes, I think so. I think we can accommodate. In fact, we will have many topics on this new and improved podcast. Topics ranging from why, if you love Shin Godzilla, you are actually a true fan, and why, if you hate Shin Godzilla, you are actually a non-fan of the franchise, and why you are... Yes, the shame, and why you must be expelled from the giant monster fandom if you do not like the anime trilogy. Yes, quite right. And why that Godzilla 1998 is indeed a Godzilla movie.
My personal favorite.
Yes. And we will also be covering topics like Kamen Rider and why it is the inferior Henshin hero show in history, and why it is vastly lower on the level of quality than something like Super Sentai or the American adaptation Power Rangers.
I truly have no idea what you just said, but I am willing to learn and learn with you.
Yes. And we will also be covering topics like why, if you are not willing to spend hundreds of dollars on a 6-inch plastic toy shaped like a bug, you are indeed not a true fan.
Oh, goodness, no. In fact, isn't there some sort of Matango toy coming out soon? I think I saw something about that.
Yes, I believe so. There is. I saw it on the interwebs the other day. I actually had to Google it myself, as the kids are saying these days. Yes,
Yes.
it is quite a beautiful statue indeed. I thought of you whenever I saw it, of course.
Flattery will get you everywhere, sir, I assure you, and I'm considering putting in the old pre-order as well, aside from the fact that I really don't make that much under the employment of the island, and, well, I do get to live with the real deal, as it were.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, if this relationship pans out and we become the top-rated, wonderful podcast that I anticipate us being, I will buy that toy for you myself.
You move me to tears, sir.
Yes. I am but a generous host. I am but a generous member of the Monster Island Board of Directors.
I feel that this is truly the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Truly beautiful indeed. Now, I will be honest, Mr. Dourif, you were not my first choice in co-hosts when the topic came up of starting, or I should say, improving upon the Monster Island Film Vault podcast.
Oh, well, nobody's perfect, I suppose, except for my children. Yes.
Oh, that is still, I'm never going to get used to that. That is terribly unsettling. I'm so happy that I'm not in the same room with you right now, else I would be truly terrified.
And did you say something? I thought I heard that. You say...
No. I said, no. I didn't say anything like that at all. No, it's okay. It's okay. You can rest now. I will do the rest of the talking until I ask you to speak. How about that?
That seems unbalanced, but mostly fair, and I agree to your terms.
Thank you. I am a fair and just leader, yes. So, Dr. Dourif, we will be covering topics that has to do with mathematics, biology, and science.
Oh,
yes.
Science.
Yes, science. 3 topics that I know you are vastly familiar with, especially in the world of biology. Here you go. Here's might be an interesting thing to share with the listeners. How about you give the listeners a little bit of background in your biological skills?
Oh, well, where indeed to begin? I suppose it all started the day I crashed on that distant, foggy island. It was many decades ago now, and as it happened, I was the only survivor of my party. I was there following the proverbial scientific breadcrumbs. Somewhere out there in the Pacific, they said, was an island filled with monstrous creatures, monstrous things that transformed you into something not human. Naturally, I was interested, and so my travels took me there. Over great distances and through rough seas, over a graveyard of ships, and, well, it was all worth it. I found them. I found the mushrooms, the Matango themselves, a beautiful, shrouded in fog island, yes, many ships rusting along its beaches, and then in the center of the island, what most would consider to be a nightmare, an image of hell itself, bubbled up in shockingly mushroomy form. But I was not afraid. I heard them in my head, calling to me, summoning me, telling me to consume, to eat of them, to become one. And so I did. I ate them all. I took them into myself. I became one with them. I understood them in a way that I fear no other man would have the nerve to do. But when I returned to the mainland with my findings, I was shunned, treated as some sort of monster myself. Can you believe that, Mr. the Third? Me, a monster to be ostracized and shunned. Me, of all people, shunned.
It seems a bit extreme, if you ask me.
Oh, I certainly agree, which is why, when I received a grant to come to Monster Island and study my beautiful mushroom children here, I gladly accepted. And it's been a wonderful experience. I'm mostly left alone. I can't really imagine why, but it's mostly just me in my basement with my beautiful children and the research that I gain from studying them, my unique connection to them, and maybe even getting inside their heads, understanding their plans for humanity, their grand, overarching plans. Such beautiful sights I have seen, such beautiful visions they have given me, things I can't wait to share with the world, and when I share them, the world will never be the same. You'll all see soon enough. That's mostly my backstory.
So, okay, that was quite a lot to take in, Dr. Dourif, but we thank you for sharing your story. I know that the listeners deeply appreciate what they just heard. I'm a little bit unnerved by it, to be honest, but I'm sure that I'll get used to it over time. So,
well, you really don't have a choice, do you? I am your co-host.
Well, yes, you are my co-host. That is true. oh boy, what did I get myself into?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Nothing. Well, Dr. Dourif, it seems that we have run out of time for this episode. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. It was a pleasure. Yes, a pleasure. That's the word that I'm looking for. Pleasure. Yes, it was quite a pleasure to have you on. It'll be a pleasure to work with you as my co-host, forever how long that has to be or gets to be. But I just want to say to our dear listeners, please do not hesitate to leave us some feedback about our new podcast. It is because of you, the faithful Monster Island Board of Directors presents the Monster Island Gatekeepers podcast, that we can do the things that we do, and we can help everyone see a better way forward. So, with that, I'm going to conclude this podcast because, quite frankly, I have to make a very important, very long-distance call, and you are starting to creep me out. So, Dr. Dourif, thank you again for joining us, and we will see everyone, or we will talk to everyone next time. The Monster Island Board of Directors presents the Monster Island Gatekeepers podcast is brought to you by the Monster Island Board of Directors. The art, music, and sound effects used in this program are owned by their respective copyright holders and with no infringement implied, or something like that. Thank you again for listening. If you would like to follow us on social media, we are Monster Isla BOD on Twitter. Thank you for helping us find a better way forward.
Sayonara.